Hey guys, it's Adi. How's it going? Welcome to today's episode. Today, I wanted to take a deeper look at a trait, a personality trait, or I guess more of a behavior, you could say, that makes a really big difference when you are trying to, to get to that next level in your career. And so I know that in the past we've taken a look at all sorts of things, like all sorts of different requirements that I've identified and shared with you for trying to uplevel your career, trying to break into tech specifically, and also in general, like to achieve goals that you've kind of set for yourself. And I think one that doesn't really get a lot of attention, even though I do think I cover it kind of. It's always in the background of what I talk about, but I don't think that I've ever spoken about it explicitly with you guys. And so I really want to do that today because um it's such an important concept to adopt to like in your own life and in your own behavior. And also because I think that there is, and we'll explore like why this happens, but there is also a lot of resistance to it. And so what I'm talking about is this idea of taking ownership over your career, taking ownership over what happens to you in your professional life, and ultimately seeing yourself as the CEO of your own career, no matter what your job is, no matter what it is that you actually do for a living. Seeing yourself as the CEO of your career has incredible benefits and also has a tremendous cost if you fail to do so. And this is true in the context of your career, but it's also true in the context of like life in general, right? Like a lot of these things, a lot of the things that we talk about can be applied to life, and it's not a coincidence, right? Because to me, like you guys might know this, but like I see the kind of like the quest to up level a career. That is like something that might be like front and center in your mind right now because it's the most urgent thing for you to solve. But really, you know, like yes, you should solve that. Yes, you need to find a way to move forward with that and achieve your goal. But it's also a container through which you can achieve even greater an even greater standard of living, like beyond just getting a higher salary and um being like in a job where you're more respected and you feel more valued. Like yes, all these things are awesome, and and they should be taken care of, right? But like all these this entire quest, this entire challenge to uplevel your career is also the way to do it, and the right way to do it, right? Like the way that is most beneficial to do it will not only solve that problem, but it will also uplevel like so many other areas and aspects of your life. So like for example, you know, this idea of taking ownership and seeing yourself really as like the captain of the ship of your career. And I think that a lot of times when we're struggling with something, when especially when we're struggling with something for a long time and we tried and we really like we feel like we put ourselves on the line and we put so much effort in and it's still not working, then it can be tempting to look for a reason why it's not working. And in general, there are like two different buckets that people go to in terms of reasons why, or reasons why things haven't been working, right? So the first one is kind of like external factors. So I don't have the right support, the process is broken, the timing is wrong, like the economy is bad, or things are happening outside of me that are out of my control, um, or or it can be like directed inwards, where like, I don't have what it takes. I'm just not cut out for it. I should just give up. This is not something that people like me can achieve. Okay? And so I kind of want to make the argument that even though, like, I want to first of all acknowledge why we do that, and I think it's totally normal and it's totally just part of being human to do that. But also, it's important to understand that it is unproductive, and there is a better way, and kind of a better way of thinking about it. And so, basically, the reason that this happens, and the reason why it's also so understandable, is that when we're trying to do something and it's not working out, we want to defend ourselves a little bit, right? We get a little bit defensive. We've made ourselves vulnerable in some way, even if we didn't tell anybody else what we set out to achieve. We know what we set out to achieve. And so even if we're only vulnerable to our own inner critic, we're still vulnerable, right? And so that part of us, we will try to protect it by finding those reasons. So that's the reason why we go either outside of us or inside to find kind of like, just to try to justify why it didn't work. And I kind of want to make the case that those things are not productive, and they're not even relevant. So before I do that, I have to touch on the resistance, because I'm sure that this is going to come up, as you're listening, that resistance might come up for you to taking ownership. And I think it needs to be addressed like very early on. And so what I noticed in terms of why people resist taking ownership and why they sometimes like really fight it is that there's either it's either an issue of conflating like taking ownership with taking blame and fault, right? So thinking that by taking ownership of something, I say, this was my fault. I am to blame. I am guilty, right? And then the second thing is that they think, the second kind of piece, the second reason that people resist taking ownership is because they think their story is under attack. Like that we're basically, that the facts that they come up with to justify what happened are being disputed. And I want to explain why like neither of those things are true. So first of all, it's never about blame. It is never ever about blame. And I think this is something like finding fault and finding like the guilty party and who to blame. It's something that's so like embedded in our culture. It just permeates so much, and it really like stifles a lot of growth and development, because we're so busy trying to either like find or deflect blame that we're not actually like moving on and creating and like solving problems. So instead of learning from our achievements and learning from our mistakes, we're kind of like in this like perpetual dwelling mode, which is really unproductive. And then the other thing is that no one is disputing the facts. Like your facts could be 100% true, but you still have the power to write a better story for yourself. And you are always going to be the one with that stands to gain from that. That stands to gain most from choosing to like rewrite that story. So if we're like to take a concrete example from the job searching world, right? I truly believe that the way that the hiring process is done is totally broken and almost like downright stupid. Like the way that it is done today, the way that companies hire, or like the way that companies look for ideal candidates, is the thing that it optimizes for is efficiency. The thing that it optimizes for is, saving time for the hiring manager, saving time for the hiring company, because for understandable reasons, right? Because time literally is money for those companies. The longer they spend like looking through candidates, the more money they're losing by not having the problem solved that they're hiring for. That's the reason they are hiring for, right? But the problem is that their strategy for doing that is to say like, okay, we have this pipeline through which we accept applications, through which we accept, your resume, and we are going to take every single applicant that comes through and we're going to match them against this filter that we have, right? And if they don't make that first cut, we just discard them right away, like right off the bat. And what happens is, like, yes, they do manage to disqualify a lot of unqualified people that way, but they also lose out on some really great gems of people, some really great assets that could have been like a force multiplier for their company, that could have been like a competitive edge for their company, right? Because they come from a little bit of a different background, because they come from something that's not like 100% a fit for exactly like that cookie cutter, mold that they're looking for, that because that's all they know to look for, or because that's all they know how to look for, right? They end up having a lot of misses too. So yes, everybody that comes through is like insanely qualified on paper. But out of the ones that they disqualified, there are some really great finds that could have been even better in terms of performance, in terms of like their contribution to the company. That could have been better than the ones that on paper are like perfect fits. So yes, I totally agree. Like, that's all to say, like, I totally agree that the system is broken. But you as an individual, you as the job seeker, you can't sit around and say, well, it's not working because, I've been trying to break into this, tech companies and this role for 4 months. And I keep submitting my application and I'm not getting any responses. And the responses that I am getting are like not the responses that I want. And I haven't gotten a single offer. And it's just, obviously the process is broken, because I know that I can do the things that I read that they need, but they don't see that because their system is designed to filter me out. And if you're already at that step where you see like how qualified you are, and you see like how the system is broken, you're actually ahead of a lot of job seekers. But this little piece of taking ownership is missing, because you can't sit around saying those things and waiting for the process to be fixed, right? Like, let's be real, like, it's not going to be fixed. I don't know how long it's going to take, right? Like, it's not going to be fixed until there are lots of people like us working inside and outside of the system to fix the process, to make it more, like, to make it better. And so the worst thing you can do is to resign yourself to, to kind of say like, okay, well, the process is broken, so I can't do it, or like, or even worse, like, I guess I'm just not good enough. Right. And then what? Right. You're never gonna get it if that is the attitude. If the attitude is like, oh, something didn't work, so that means I am not good enough, that is 100% not a winning attitude. And also, sitting around waiting for the system to get better, or waiting for someone else to recognize your greatness, it's also not a winning strategy. And so you need to have to take that ownership and realize, hey, like, I'm the CEO of my career, and I can't continue to go this traditional route, which is obviously not working, right? And instead of pointing fingers and saying, oh my gosh, this process is so stupid. Why is it so stupid? Why is this not working? Get up and do something about it. Get up and find a strategy that does work. Find a way that does help you sidestep that whole like stupidity of the process, and basically find a different way, right? Because that's what we do when we take ownership. When we take ownership, we say we are going to find a way. It's on us to find a way. So it's basically saying it's on me. Yes, things might be going on outside. Yes, like, it is a fact that this is how they do things, right? And it is an opinion that it's stupid, but it's a pretty, like, you would agree with that, right? But, like, even so, and then what? How does that help me get what I want? And the answer is it doesn't. So if I want to take the power back to myself and empower myself, I need to be able to take ownership. And that I hope can get past any resistance, because what I've seen is that people resist their power. People resist their ownership because they think that if they take ownership, they are, like, admitting that the process is okay. They're admitting that it's not hard. They're admitting that, all this stuff, and it has nothing to do with it. The facts remain the same. You can still think that the process is idiotic, but by taking ownership, what you're saying is all that, and I refuse to let that define what's going to happen to me. Okay? So, this kind of reminds me of a scene from Working Moms. Do you guys watch Working Moms? It's, anyways, this Canadian show. It's, it actually, like, yeah, it's pretty entertaining. And there's this one part where the main character is having, like, this big conflict in her work, and she has to make a really tough call. Like, she has to make a really tough decision about a business partner. And her husband tells her, like, she's really, like, worked up about it. She's worried about it, and she's upset. And her husband tells her, like, whatever happens, this is your company. Like, no one's coming to save you. And she goes, something like, oh, well, that's like not a comforting thing to say. But then he goes, no. Like, what I mean is, like, this is your company. It's completely, like, whatever you do, it's yours, right? Like, the choice is yours. The company's yours. What happens next is yours. It's all on you. So yeah, it can be, like, morbidly terrifying to think that way, right? Like, no one's coming. But it's also, like, once you get past that, it is also very empowering, because if no one's coming, that means, like, you don't have to wait to be saved. You don't have to wait for some superhero to come and, like, save you and put you where you want to be. Like, you get to do it yourself. You get to do it yourself, because you get to be the superhero. Okay, so that's what I mean by being the CEO of your career. And it's really very liberating too, right? Because when you take ownership, people can't really hook into you, into, like, those into those feelings. People, like, can't manipulate you by guilting or shaming you about something, because you've already taken, when you already assume ownership of it, then they can't, like, trigger those feelings. You're free from those feelings. You took ownership. You reject shame and guilt. You assume ownership. Okay? And also, no matter what happens to you, you stay the true master of your life and the true master of your story. You stay that CEO of your career, right? And so, and that is very liberating, and really quite empowering. And then the opposite is also true, right? Like, not taking ownership is really expensive. It comes at a very high cost, because when you are always throwing blame at other people, when you're always like, even if it's not out loud, right? Like, if it's out loud, it makes you look petty, it makes you look childish, it makes you look really unprofessional, and it makes you look out of control. But even if it's not out loud, even if it's just like this like little soundtrack playing in the back of your head that you're not speaking out loud, but it's still there, you still are out of control, right? If other things or other people or other events have the power to make your life better or worse, to make you better or worse, then you give them the keys, not only to your career and, your professional and financial future, but you give them the keys to your happiness and well-being as well. So it's just not worth it, right? Like, you might get something out of it, right? There is like a little bit of a payoff from not taking ownership, right? There's that tiny payoff of being able to of having like someone or something else to blame. But it's such a fleeting satisfaction, and it's not worth being stripped of your power to do that. Okay? So that is why, like, that is kind of what taking ownership of your career is in a nutshell, and why it's important, and kind of why it's important to do that, and also to not do that. Okay, so that's it for today's show. If you are, if you feel like you're ready to take ownership of your career, and you want the strategy to do that and do it well, then go ahead and book a call with me at thisilresistible.com/apply. You can choose a time that works for you from my calendar, and we'll get on the phone and chat about your career and where you want to go. And one last thing is that we do have, for those of you listening to this or watching this, I guess, in the group, we do have a podcast now called Breakthrough to High Tech, and you can find it basically anywhere you find you listen to podcasts. And if you're listening to this on the podcast, then you can find and join our group, Destination High Tech Mom, on Facebook. And there, like, you can ask questions, and also, like, sometimes we do these live. So, sometimes we do this show live on the group. So yeah, I will see you in either one of those things. And please let me know if there is any questions that you're having about your career, any questions on this topic that we talked about today. And hope you all had a very lovely weekend, and I'll see you next time. Bye.